Hey guys, it's another week in the For Your Reference household. We are starting off with a trigger warning. Unfortunately, the trigger warning is integral to the plot, but we wouldn't want people to go into it without having any periphery. So this is a trigger warning, especially for our trans friends and lovers. Other announcements, we recently guested on our Pod Pals, the Book of Lies podcast. Take the promo away.
Hey, this is Book of Lies podcast, where we talk about liars, cheats, and thieves.
Yeah, we do. We release a new episode every Tuesday on all major podcast players. We talk about, like she said, liars, cheats, and thieves.
Scammers, fraudsters, and dirty, rotten scoundrels.
Oh yeah, we keep it real with ya. We like to have a lot of fun. There's curse words involved, so no kids are allowed. But check us out. We would love you to join us.
On your favorite podcatcher.
Bye.
Bye.
Girl, it's the For Your Reference podcast. You got your host, Katie.
And OT.
Prepare the jet on someone else's dime and link up with your bestie as we twist into Myasha Coleman's secret society. Woo-hoo-hoo, OT. What a wild ride.
It was.
Yes, and you would have heard the trigger warning at the start of this episode. It is integral to the plot of the film, but we do love and accolade you just as much. But, you know, to make it up to us, you'll have to go and watch the film because it deserves all the attention that it gets and hopefully will continue to get in regards to the film. Let's get into the stats. This was written by Myasha Coleman. A novel that was written over 15 years ago, self-funded with her husband to bring this film, no major sort of production into it. It is a very insular sort of production financially in regards to the film. We also have Jamal Hill directing. We have Raina Love, Erica Pinkett, and Vivica A. Fox. You know what I love about Black Twitter, OT?
Yeah.
Whether they choose to or whether they're doing it to be playful, they tweeted the ever eternal Vivica A. Fox asking her why was she so mean to her kid in this movie. Like we mentioned before, this film is very accessible. It is available on Amazon pretty much everywhere around the world. Make sure you go and check it out. Spoiler. And Universal, splooshes, OT. Let's get into our first impressions in regards to this film. As learned as we are, because I did mention I read Pride and Prejudice, there are many books that we didn't even know about or we just haven't read before we watch the film companion of it. So give us your first impressions. We pretty much just stumbled across this film. And how did you feel watching it? We'll come to the twist in a second, but how did you generally feel about the film?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed what it was telling, the storyline, the messaging. And I thought that a lot of the times that it brought us to talk and think about things that we never really did. And that was an essence that I didn't think I would be talking about after watching a movie.
Yeah.
Especially seeing the poster, it didn't give anything away and I didn't know what to expect. And, you know, we love watching and supporting Black creators. So when we came across it, I was like, oh, cool, let's give it a go. And at the end of it, I was sitting there on my couch and thinking, wow, I didn't expect it to go this way. I didn't expect to have so many feelings about it. I didn't expect to have a conversation that we had after the movie. And what else can a movie do rather than incite these emotions and feelings for you?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes even though I'm a straight shooter, pow, sometimes it is hard to have difficult conversations, even though they need to be had. So you have films, you have music, you have arts essentially to help you convey what you've been trying to, communicate to people that you hold dear. And I really enjoyed the journey that we went on in this film without knowing any sort of context because, like we mentioned, and I guess let's talk about the twist now. The women that we are presented to are trans women. Mm-hmm. So without any sort of inkling, it's not even in the description, which I am finding to believe is possibly deliberate. So, the opening scene that we have in this film is, they're really get it girls, they're going out, they're getting theirs, they're unapologetically embracing their sexuality. Mm-hmm. And then it comes to a point where we realize, oh, there's actually more layers to this. Yep. Right? Interesting. It was interesting, but also at the same time, I guess part of it is, and Miasha, I'll talk about it. I was watching an interview, a T.S. Madison interview where she was talking about it. She actually gave 2 reasons on why her as a cisgendered woman decided to cast cisgendered women and not trans women. Okay. In these roles. So we'll come to that in a second. But just generally talking about the twist, I wasn't expecting that, but that's also when I started to care. Because at the start it's like, yeah, they're at the club, fine, $1,000, but then you think about, the long con, right? They're obviously going to recoup that $1,000. Yeah. Right? So we understood that and we got that. So I'm like, okay, fine, but why do I care? Like, why do I care about these 2 women? Right? There's also an internalized hatred that I would say on behalf of cisgender, but also all women in general have, and the way we pit each other against men, because they were calling them thoughts, but they were acting pretty thoughty, I must say. Yeah. So it was a dynamic that I was like, okay, fine, but we've seen this before. Hustlers to a lesser degree, Pussy Valley, P Valley to the celestial degree. Mm-hmm. Like we've seen hustling men for their money. So we've seen it before. I'm like, okay, fine. Let's continue to see where this is going. It was distracting to have that handsome prisoner. That meme, Khalil, if you remember. Yes. I'm sure even his mother calls him the handsome prisoner as well. Yep. So it was like, okay, fine. Where are we getting into? A lot of the time I like to find where I can lay my emotional resonance. Right. So at that particular point, I didn't really care. And then when it came to the twist, it completely transformed what this film was going to be. Right. How I feel about trans characters being the twist is a story for another day, but it's also a story that's beyond Secret Society. Alice in Borderland, without spoiling anything, we have covered it. Go and watch it. It's on Netflix. They kind of have, like, not to say it's a bad thing, but I would love to live in a world or in a dimension where trans characters are just trans characters. Veneno, for example. So yeah, I guess that's just sort of my general feelings in regards to this film. Let's talk about the twist. Okay.
So you said that there was a reason why they casted cisgendered women. Mm-hmm. Could you shed light on that? Because I think that was one of the questions that I asked you at the end of the movie, and having some trepidations over what to cover on how I would be able to speak about this. Then I think it's important to sort of lay that out now.
Yeah, absolutely. I am also a cisgendered woman, and unfortunately that means there are some blinkers that I have in regards to the overall experience of all people, including trans people. But in regards to the T.S. Madison interview that Miasha was on, she gave 2 main reasons why she chose to cast cisgendered women instead of trans women in Secret Society. The first one being that she wanted the twist to be a twist. Mm-hmm. So she wanted cisgendered women, so they're women. And there was a part of me that was feeling a bit of like umbrage in regards to that, because trans women are women and they can be wholly feminine, female presenting. There's a whole spectrum to how presenting we can be as women. But, you know, that's fine. I didn't really care for that particular explanation, but it was one of those, like, when it becomes the twist, you're like, oh, okay. And not like, oh yeah, I saw it coming sort of thing. So that particular reason I didn't really care for. But the second reason that Miasha gave was that she knew if she was to cast trans women in a film like this, it would automatically turn people off this film. And let's be real, let's talk about it, because as much as we live in a, you know, I'll sploosh you if you sploosh me sort of for your reference world, unfortunately, there are ignorant motherfuckers, and I'm sure I can be kinder to that. But there are ignorant motherfuckers out there that as soon as they see a trans actor, a trans person or a gay person or an LGBTQIA plus person, they're like, oh, it's a queer story. I don't need to watch this sort of thing. So that kind of made me a bit more understanding about it, because as soon as I, you know, try to do research in this film and I learned that the two main leads were cisgendered women, it didn't sit well with me. But I'm glad that I watched the interview, because she was saying, as much as we feel like we've come so far, there are an audience of people that just will automatically disregard it and not watch it for that reason. Right? So that's the reasoning behind why we have cisgendered women casted in the role. Some people might not even care, which is great, but also for those that she wanted to be able to reach that could possibly challenge, maybe not change, but at least challenge their own ignorances and ugly behaviors towards other people, then that's also a win as well.
Yeah, fully agreed.
And friends and lovers, take note. This is a very valuable, not just podcast, but life lesson that OT demonstrated. Hear more about the facts before jumping into your opinion. So yeah, Miasha was also talking about how when she wrote the book 15 years ago, she just started writing them as Get 'em Girls without any sort of semblance. You know, it would be nice to understand what that creative process looks like, but it came to her while she was writing the book about trans women, right? But she went out and she did her research. Right. You know, is this phrase okay? Is what I'm saying offensive? Is this correct? How does this work? Right. And even in regards to the film, Amaya Scott, she reached out to Amaya Scott on how the film sits and whether it's comfortable and whether it's, you know, celebrating trans people in the best way possible. Trans women in particular, Black trans women in particular. Protect Black trans women at all cost, friends and lovers. All right. So now we've got all of that out of the way, and I hope that does help, because I was feeling a way after watching the film and, you know, feeling a way about it. So hopefully that will alleviate your feelings in regards to the film, and we can start to appreciate the film, and hopefully when we get to reading the book for what it is. Mm-hmm. So I definitely want to sploosh and love and give accolades to Miasha and the whole team at Secret Society for telling a story that we don't normally hear. Mm-hmm. That is also done in a way that is celebrating trans women. It doesn't necessarily focus on the journey, even though we do have flashbacks. It's them living in their truth, fully loving and embracing themselves. Whenever we have stories that focus on opulence and fortune, I want to feel poor when I'm watching a rich story. And that was absolutely achieved. Also, shout out to the costume director, because this film had so many outfits, so many grandeur, everything felt rich. And the fact that they self-funded this film is also credit as well. There were jets, there were designer goods, there was popping bottles at the club, there was everything.
True. Yes, there was definitely an air of opulence all over this movie. And, Celeste and Tina really did bring out the characters, and you started to sort of care for them, especially when you started listening to their backstory and getting to know them as people and how it all sort of transpired and why they do what they do and how they became to be.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the most intriguing stories that I've seen this year so far.
Oh, absolutely. It was a film that minded its own business and really focused on the characters and the journeys that they were going through. Let's focus on the two mains. Do you want to start with Tina or you want to start with Celeste?
Let's start with Tina.
Okay, I have a lot to say in regards to Tina and Celeste's dynamic. Tina is definitely the more assured character, I would say. And I also believe it would have to do with the fact that Tina was out before Celeste was.
Yeah.
That unfortunately garners a building of a tough skin because kids are dickheads and they grow up to be dickhead adults.
Yep.
As well. And, there were semblances of bullying through the film as well. And when we first meet Tina as a kid in one of the flashbacks, she's unapologetically herself.
Yep.
Even though bullying and terrible inflicting lifelong trauma was going to happen to Tina, she was happy to be in her own skin.
Yeah, she was. And I think one of the most sort of important moments in the movie was seeing how she probably navigated life as a little kid alone by herself, and how she was able to live out her life and support herself without having any sort of support.
Yeah.
Her mother, stepdad,
Yeah.
both died.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that you realize just so much trauma that Tina had gone through to see the sort of protectiveness that she has for Celeste.
Yeah.
She has that sort of mama bear presence to her where she wants Celeste. She's always there to give advice. She's really, cut the fucking emotions out.
Yeah.
It does not matter. At the end of the day, you're looking out for you and yourself and your well-being. Because no one else is going to do that shit for you.
Absolutely.
And she paints that really, really well. And I think it's it comes across, and Celeste keeps on referring to this throughout the movie. For a cold-hearted woman, she really does care. She really does love.
Cold-hearted people have the warmest hearts. And that's coming from a cold-hearted bitch. I think it's like I guess I can only speak for myself, but like I choose when to care, because even though you care doesn't mean the other person is receptive or reciprocating that. And it is very unfortunate for Tina's backstory. I guess I don't want to go into too much detail because I know some of you friends and lovers are nasty people and you're continuing to listen even though you haven't watched the film. So I won't go into too much detail, but there was a lot of trauma in regards to Tina's upbringing and what she went through, and it felt real. If that makes sense, because what you would hope, I would imagine as an audience member, is to have moments of resonating opportunities with the characters. And Tina, straight from the jump, we were absolutely in love with her and we wanted the best for her.
Yeah.
But a very interesting sort of dichotomy, not necessarily with Tina, more so with Celeste, but I will mention it now, is even though we could see how rough it was for Tina and Celeste, going to the present in regards to the story, we still felt a way about them conning people.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting, right? Because I don't necessarily think it was a problem with the writing. I think it was just our love for all people, and then us not wanting innocent sort of bystanders, so to speak, to be chunked.
Yes. And I think I didn't get to feel that until Michael was introduced. You know, the other people were there to have fun,
Yeah.
to cheat on their wives.
In and out.
Yeah, in and out. Like, fair enough. You get yours, you be happy, doesn't fucking matter. But then when feelings get involved and emotions and people's, you know, starting to develop this sort of love for you.
You're like Avatar tentacling each other.
Yeah, then that's what things start getting murky. And I think Tina brought it up pretty quickly and she was like, mate, you need to cut this off right there and then because this guy's getting feelings and it's getting serious. And this is where things can get really, really messy.
But I think it's also at the same time, like Tina is coming out of a place of love and a place of experience. She's not just saying it because she's a bitter bitch. Like she wants Celeste to be okay and she learnt that lesson the hard way. So she doesn't want Celeste to have to go through any sort of pain if she doesn't have to.
Yeah. I think that's one of the core moments in the movie because that was one of the major discussing points that we had. You know, it really just started a conversation between the two of us where we had to sort of weigh the sort of issues or the moral quandary that was being presented because at the end of the day, when is it right? When is it right for you to draw the line and to be fully honest about something that's intimately yours and not anyone else's fucking business?
Yeah, well, I guess we can come to that when we talk about Celeste, but Tina in particular, you know, we also have flashbacks when they were working on the streets and it's that innate sort of survival and that innate sort of feeling of safety. You know, Tina trying to school Celeste and being like, make sure you take a photo of the plates. If I don't come back in half an hour, you know what happened to me. And I guess it's also interesting from a story point of view when Miyasha decided to drop these little nuggets, right? Because you can tell a linear storyline, which is absolutely fine. Usually convolutedness is the Nolan sort of landscape where Nolans thrive. But in any case, you can have flashbacks and that sort of thing. I don't necessarily like how I have a problem with narration in most cases. But in regards to the flashbacks, it was interesting that we weren't introduced to them working on the streets until after. Because that didn't get introduced until later on in the film, which, you know, looking back at it now, I do wonder if it's like, so us as an audience don't judge too early. But for me, it kind of reinforced how I felt about Celeste. So let's go to Celeste. I don't want to talk about the ending of the characters right now. So let's go to Celeste now. I had a problem with Celeste because she seemed to always feel like there was an option. Fine, but also at the same time, when you feel like there's always going to be another option, there's always going to be another opportunity that you can con someone, that's where it becomes very dangerous. And a lot of the time watching this film, I had a lot of anxiousness and there was a lot of suspense. And I was really stressed watching this because it's one thing to watch cisgendered women, you know, embrace their sexuality. Unfortunately, in a male-dominated, sexual liberated society, that's one thing, right? But to see trans women navigate this world knowing how cisgendered straight males are threatened by the thought of sexual experiences with anyone that isn't cisgendered women, it made me stress so much. And I guess that also in a way made me care for the characters. I don't know if it forced me to, but it made me care about these characters and I didn't want anything to happen to them.
Yeah.
And Celeste was playing a very dangerous game.
She was. She really was playing a dangerous game. And I think she was doing even more so than Tina was before Tina found Derek. So it was a point where I was like, surely the ball has to drop somewhere. Because if you don't have, was it Michael, James, Gary, like it was so many people in and out and at the higher risk of exposing yourself. So it's, man, I was just worried that things was going to go really badly quite quickly for her.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like Celeste always felt like she was always going to have Tina there to, have her back, right? She was kind of always her safety net, which isn't a bad thing, but then it also means you don't understand the full risk of what you are doing.
Yeah.
And it was symbiotic, and it was beautiful to see that Tina and Celeste had that reciprocity, right? The yin and yang. But also at the same time, you want your girl to succeed. And sometimes that means she's going to succeed on her own. In that case, it's when, Tina and Derek got together, right?
Yeah.
You have to be happy for your friends, especially the ones that have been sheltering you and looking after you and protecting you and insulating you with the love that you deserve and Tina also deserves.
Yeah, there was a moment of Celeste's reaction. I was like, oh man, you just have to be happy. But then you come to realize that it's not coming from a place of jealousy or anything like that. It's just more worry because she just thought there had to be something deeper, bigger issue that she wasn't seeing because happiness wasn't meant for them. They were never going to have a happy ending. They were never going to have a prince. And that was just a thought far removed from her that she didn't really see. And we get to later on see that she finally accepts that and she sort of sees Derek for being just a good guy.
Yeah.
And Tina fully getting what she deserved in life. And that's love and happiness.
It was interesting to see the differences, because I think Tina was just more aware of where they have been and where they could in a blink go back to, right? I don't think Celeste really registered if this fucking falls apart, this go get 'em hustle sort of nature, they would be back where they were.
Yep.
And I don't think and I guess it's also because she had Tina as a safety net. Like, if this doesn't work out, Tina's going to figure it out for me. Right? That's kind of how I saw it happening. It was an uneven sort of dynamic, as beautiful and loving as it was. Sometimes Tina just needed to live her life.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. But they've been through this throughout the whole life. Tina taught her a lot. But at the end of it, when Tina had written that letter, she said that, Celeste, despite everything else, she learned a lot from Celeste.
Yeah.
It wasn't just one way. It was quite symbiotic. And
I don't agree, but
maybe that was just one of the things you say just to make the other person feel better. But to me, it just showed the sort of bond that they had, that regardless of how one-sided it seemed to us at the start.
But there are different ways to love and receive love.
Yeah.
My love. And some people receive love through helping others. And Tina's just one of those people. Well, since you took us there, let's go all the way there. We talk about OT being the accountant because he has so much tax. I think I have trans tax because I was giving a lot of graces to Celeste, not necessarily Tina, more so Celeste, right? Moments where, regardless, she was being a terrible person, but I was like, no, but you don't understand what she would have went through. You know what I mean? Like, I had a lot of taxes in regards to this film. And in regards to, the trans tax that I have is I don't want to see trans characters die. I just don't want to see it. Right? Like, you show us the pain and the struggle of their life and then they die. Like, I don't want to see it. Watch out for my screenplay. All trans people live and no one dies. How did you feel? I guess it's for emotional payoff. Yeah. That Tina pretty much met her character arc. It was a wholly fulfilled character arc for Tina. However, Celeste still had a lot to learn. So I would say for this to happen, it would be some sort of emotional payoff so that Celeste will be able to grow in the way that she has resisted being able to grow throughout the film. Thoughts?
I don't think I agree with that. I think Tina dying was just one of the things to show that, a lot of the times we don't really get our happy endings.
No! All trans people deserve a happy ending, no one else.
And, for all that they've been through, it was one of their earlier sort of encounters that brought that to them. They knew they were dangerous, but yet they took the chance. They bought their $1,000 bottle because, James was going to have a big career being a basketball, being drafted in the NBA and stuff like that.
Yeah, but Tina was taking risks, but she was smart about it. Why did Tina have to absolve the sins of Celeste?
She didn't. She didn't have to absolve. It was out of love. She put herself in front. She was like, nah, if you have any qualms, deal with me. Let Celeste go. At the end of it, Khalil didn't care. Khalil was gonna kill both of them. It's just that he just didn't shoot Celeste critically,
Yeah, but that just shows how amazing Tina was as a character. Because even though, it was all for naught because Khalil was going to kill both of them anyway, but she's still trying to save Celeste. Do you not understand the imbalance in their dynamic? She was always trying to protect Celeste.
She's the mama bear.
When did Celeste ever say, "Hey, shoot me instead"?
I'm sure given the chance she would, she'd probably tread places.
No.
I reckon. I don't think it's that one-sided. I think she really does love Tina. And at the end of it, Tina bought her house.
Yeah.
For a birthday gift. Mate, how many people give houses as gifts unless you're bloody Oprah?
Hit us up on sugarots.com. Did you see the film playing out in the way that it did, that Khalil was going to come back? Did you see it playing out that way?
No, I just thought they'd leave and live happily ever after.
Right, riding off into the sunset.
No, but then again, there was Celeste was narrating in this, and she said things were going to get really bad because
it's dangerous.
Yeah, when it's too good to be true, it usually is. So there was that hanging over our heads throughout.
Yeah.
Not knowing, wait a minute, when is it going to get bad? You guys are living it, You're getting yours. Now Tina's married. You have O, and then O dies. And I was like, oh, maybe that's why. But nah, there's more to come because that's the biggest loss in the movie.
Oh, yeah. Like from Celeste's point of view. But she was being very dangerous even before O dying. And shout out to Trey Chaney, our poot from The Wire. It's good to know that Foot Locker was treating him well.
Became a millionaire out of that.
Because he was married, yeah?
Yeah.
He was married, but he was rich. He had excess, and he was spending the excess on Celeste.
Yeah. So it's weird that some of the men, both on Tina's and Celeste's side, knew who they were. And they just went along with it until they were comfortable enough to tell them. And even when, Celeste was telling I was like, is that because of it? I already know. I don't care.
Well, I think it's, people worry so much about what the conventional sort of standard is in regards to sexuality. But what goes on behind closed doors consensually is really none of anyone's business. It's only because they're worried that their boys are going to hear about it.
Yep.
Right? And that's why I fucking hate Michael and he's a piece of shit. But we'll talk about him in a fucking second. He is toxic Michael masculinity.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. Yes. But let's talk about her. I think even from like a story or writing point of view, everything was happening so perfectly for Celeste, right? Yeah. She wanted the happiness that Tina had, and O came along and promised her that. And I'm like, nah, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen because, without trying to check the duration of a film, we were like, no, there's still some movie to go. Something's going to happen.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And the way that it happened, and Celeste just thinking was being a dick or just, returning the favor of not responding to her messages.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, at what point do you get to worry that something really bad has happened? And, and this is where you see the differences because Tina straight from the bat, she was like, something's wrong. Call the hospitals.
Yep.
make sure everything's all
She
right.
didn't even bother. I think it was like way more than a couple of days. I
Yeah,
would
because,
say.
and that gives you the difference between Tina and Celeste. Tina knows that the world is shit.
Yeah.
And you start from the bad. Like, don't assume that he's just ignoring or some shit.
Yeah.
Start that worst possible scenario. That's probably where it's at. So start with the hospitals, see where it goes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely one of those things where, but were you still sad? Even though you saw it coming, were you still sad?
Yeah, it's put.
We love Pooh.
Yeah.
I wanted some more character development out of Celeste, because I do feel like if she had, worked on her self-growth a bit more, then Tina wouldn't have died.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say no, going back on what I said, because Khalil was out for blood anyway.
Khalil was out for blood, he
Khalil in, Khalil out.
It doesn't matter, mate. Like, I don't get it. You had a sexual encounter, you enjoyed yourselves, and you parted ways.
Yeah.
What more is there?
Nothing aside from, the third act. And I think also at the same time, I do like that it didn't come out of nowhere, right? It was when Tina and Derek were at the basketball game when they came to visit, that's when they saw him. Right? So it's like it was brewing from there. So it wasn't like, Deus Ex Machina and it came out of nowhere. Like the pieces were there. Unfortunately, penance had to be paid.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit in regards to the flashbacks. Tina specifically, like I said, I think it's just something that you need to experience while you're watching, even though the main spoiler has already been splooshed. Let's talk about Celeste and her mother, Vivica A. Fox. Not Vivica A. Fox. Please don't tweet her. She's credited as Charles' mum.
Those are a lot of things in that. I think one of the first conversations they have together, there's a very sort of sentimental, disconcerting, heartful thing that Celeste discovers.
Yeah.
The dad left because of who she was.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that she didn't really, it was a light bulb moment. She was like, wait, what?
I am so fucking sorry, but how do you have a child and then because of who they are, nah, bruv, I tap out, I'm out. Like, how the fuck does that even work? How does all of the years of loving your child just turn into I'm walking out because this is so difficult, even though it has nothing to fucking do with you and it's hard enough for Celeste to even accept herself? How dare you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And on Celeste's mom to completely blame it on her.
Gross.
Oh, man. That was some hurtful shit.
But I must say there is definitely an art in being a thespian, which I believe Vivica A. Fox is. But there's also the lack of suspension of belief, because I, with my eyes, could not see my ever eternal Vivica A. Fox saying that. So I was like, good acting. I was like, what a brilliant performance. I know you don't believe a word you were saying, but you're doing it well.
Yeah, that was really hurtful. I think the one thing that Celeste wanted was affirmation.
Yeah.
That she was loved somewhere, that she belonged somewhere, that, even her mother would love her for who she was.
And then after, I think it was a year after she was on treatments, she went to go and visit her mom.
Yeah.
And there was a perfect acting again. There was a glimmer where you realize the switch, and she realized that was Celeste.
Yep.
And then she played it off and closed the door. And it's like, why do you close the door so you can have a fucking breakdown? Do you not understand how many breakdowns you've caused for Celeste?
It is gross. And that's why you see this shaping Celeste, she didn't feel like she deserved love because she didn't get any. She just thought that, if my own mother cannot love me for who I am, who the fuck would?
Yeah.
And why the fuck would they?
Well, trans coming out stories, at least in our purview, we don't see and hear enough about it. But also at the same time, I'm glad that this film exists, and hopefully for trans kids out there that they can find something, maybe not be able to show your parents and they'll fully care and understand, but at least have some moment of reprieve where you can live in this world and how glamorous it is, how beautiful Celeste and Tina are as well, right? And how much love and adoration that they're getting as well, to be like a fuck you to your parents.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to be able to say fuck you, know your self-worth, and fucking walk out, Just say fuck you, I'm going home, Catman style.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
To even have the conversation where Celeste is like, my friend Tina, she's a boy, she was, assigned at birth, going through that whole conversation, that's me too, right? Because, at least in regards to the world of cinema and also TV shows, we do have more than a few experiences, being told from a gay point of view, but it's nice to also see trans as well.
Yeah.
Because it's like your parents can kind of maybe comprehend gay, but what does trans mean? You know what I mean? So I do appreciate that, it's in this film, and hopefully those that are able to can resonate and get some reprieve from that as well.
100%.
Let's talk about your best friend, Michael.
Oh, Michael.
I think part of the problem that we have, in this Disney, even Marvel sort of age, we're still in the 2020s dealing with mustache twirling villains or Lawrence twirling villains. I'm talking about Insecure. The final season is coming up soon and I'm very excited. Where someone is very obviously bad and then that they're a bad person. I categorize Michael in the same ilk as all of the toxic men in this film.
Wow.
You didn't seem to have a problem with him, but I also see layers, mate. I see layers, mate.
All right.
Michael is a fucking problem. Okay, fine. Let's ignore the very suspicious way he happened upon Celeste. Let's just completely ignore that. Fine. But the way in which he conducted himself upon learning about Celeste is a problem. So let's completely go there, my love. I'll just ignore the shady way that he met her.
It wasn't shady. He was getting in his car. Celeste was tipsy as fuck. And he was being a gentleman. It was like, mate, I'll call you an Uber. And then Celeste passed out.
Don't Neo Year the gentleman me. Okay, so let's talk about it. Celeste, which you would argue, took too long to tell Michael, right?
Yeah.
Whether we agree on that point or not, we'll come to because it's muy caliente. It's very spicy. But there is a dinner and Tina and Derek fly down to support her, right? And at the dinner, she isn't ready, but she's ready and she blurts out, "I'm a man." And then looking at Michael's reaction, she said, "Manager." And then I was like, oh, don't do it. Don't say something that's going to hurt her. And then it was like, oh, I thought you were about to say you're a man. Like he made this whole, uneasiness about her being comfortable to share who she is. I don't necessarily see it derogatory as Celeste's character and also in the writing for her saying she's a man, because it's one of those things where she is identifying and she is sharing a part of herself. Even throughout the film, there would be semblances of, even Tina saying, "You're gay, I know it." It's one of those things where it's within the community to patrol. I'm not going to patrol that about Celeste saying, "I'm a man," right? Because she is a trans woman. But yeah, like Michael informed, I'm pretty sure our beloved Oprah is the one that said, "You show people how to treat you." And that's what Michael did. He wasn't receptive to it. So let's go to the moment where she actually is ready, I guess you want to say. But this is the tipping point in Celeste and Michael's relationship. You go, because I'm going to tear Michael and you a new asshole.
So Michael was taken aback. You know, fair enough. He couldn't comprehend or compute what he'd had and what he'd experienced. And to me, that's fair. He did say some hurtful things which were not needed. I don't agree with that, but I felt that a lot of the people would need a moment to get themselves together.
Okay. That was me trying to get myself together, because there is a lot to talk about, because you're saying that Michael is okay to be granted this moment of, you know, bringing himself together. However, there is a transphobic, homophobic response, and you cannot ignore that, my love. Because, yeah, you can talk about, you know, he wasn't aware of it and he didn't realize this is what was happening and he didn't know who Celeste was wholly as a person. But that's not what was happening. That's what you're saying is not what was happening in the scene. He was like, oh, I made love to a dude. I kissed the dude. I kissed the man. That's the language. So in that sense, he can fuck right off to Mars or Jupiter or whatever the fuck that book says men are from, right? I do not want one iota of Michael in my presence. It was disgusting. How dare him? Trans women are women. The same thing if you had 10 kids, OT, in each continent around the world.
Who told you?
Gondwanaland told me. Like, that's not something you disclose on the first date. So Celeste is a woman. So why does she need to disclose anything on her first date? The problem that he had was the fragility of cisgendered straight males. That was the fucking problem.
I hear you.
And if you want to tweet at me, that is the heat I'm going to come with. The idea of him. No, listen, let's bring the parallels back. You know, we had the equivalent of the locker room chat when James was talking to his boys and they were like, oh, yeah, you know, derogatory. They came here, right? So they're here now. And he also mentioned their names.
Yeah.
Right? That moment where they were being really transphobic, ergo 2021 Coming to America barbershop scene, right? That's the same reaction that Michael had, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Just because someone doesn't present as a dick doesn't mean they're not a dick, and Michael is a fucking dick. I introduced you to my child. You know what he meant by that. You know what he meant by that. It wasn't introducing a romantic partner. You know. You know.
I took it. I took it as introducing someone who...
No, refuse.
I took it as him introducing someone who he didn't fully know to his kid. It takes... We've seen it a lot of times where people want to introduce their kids to people who know they'll be there. You know, they'll stick around. They've developed a bond and a trust. So when Michael rightly or wrongly felt that this trust was betrayed, then he felt away. And I think a lot of the times, I get it. There were some things he said that I didn't agree with, but I think it was just more of him coming to terms and realizing that, you know, he just needed time to sort of aggregate it all. And having gone so far in their relationship, I think he needed that. He needed that time, because at the end of it, we see that Michael does come to terms and calls Celeste.
Well, first of all, I disagree. I didn't agree with that ending. I am all for breaking up toxic relationships, and Celeste and Michael were not going anywhere. They should not be a couple at all. And you know it's going to become a Malcolm and Marie motherfucking situation. As soon as something happens, Michael's going to say you know what? It's going to be Celeste laying in the tub trying to mind her business. And then Michael, after having his mac and cheese, coming over and spouting some hateful shit at her. I don't agree that they should be a couple at all. And I guess that's as much as I will say. But Michael is a fucking problem. And friends and lovers, when you are digesting any sort of media, or even in your real life, just realize there are shit people without them having a neon sign saying, hey, I'm about to fuck up your life.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Like, I'm not going to counter that with anything because I do agree that there are shit people out there that don't present as such. But for me, Michael, I think it's more nuanced. It's more complicated.
No, it is. But it was the words that he chose to say. Because let's be real. It's the words he chose to say. Let's go back to our Pussy Valley. We know how we feel about Uncle Cliff.
Yeah.
And we never want her to be hurt in any way. Exactly. So there you go. The pussy rests, Your Honor.
Pussy rest indeed.
Hoo. Friends and lovers. Trans women are women. Protect black trans women at all costs. We're going to finish off in a segment we call For Your Reference. OT.
I'm going to reference P Valley, baby.
OTMI.
Crooked letter, I.
Oh, I guess for the whole stage name, listen to our Splooshes Awards episode and also our Pussy Valley episode, friends and lovers. I will reference Veneno.
Ooh.
We will definitely be covering it, friends and lovers. And if you've got some sad tissues as well as your happy tissues, make sure you also check it out because we will be covering it on our podcast. If you would like us to cover you on a day-to-day basis on Twitter and Instagram, we're at ForYourFPod.
Write us an email at hello@fypodcast.com.
We're also on Secret Society Podcast if you'd like to leave a rating and review. And we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Woo!